Okay, and so before we begin today, we're going to have Thunder Sharma start us off. This has been such an incredible opportunity that we've had to have Thunder open up every session for us in this series. And it's particularly important for us because Thunder is a youth. Thunder is a beautiful human that we are so grateful to have share in these spaces with us, who is also invested in little people, in community and family, and is a trans and two-spirit person who is really connected to so many different parts of little people and our families and the way that families are created, including my own daughter. So I'm really excited to have Thunder here join us to open us up to have this conversation around co-parenting and all the legal stuff. So I'll leave it up to Thunder, and I'm going to spotlight you, love, or pin you, and go right ahead.
Am I pinned? There we go. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Thunder, and I come from Saugeen First Nation. My pronouns are he, they. I'm a 21-year-old post-secondary student, as some of you, if not most of you, probably know by now if you tuned in to the other videos. I'm going to be opening up with a healing song today. So the song is called Healing Hoop and comes from Maggie Paul. So yeah, 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 way, yeah, ho, yeah, 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 way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, yeah, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, hey, oh. Yeah, 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 way, yeah, ho, yeah, yeah, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, way, yeah, hey, oh. Yeah, 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 way, yeah, ho, yeah, yeah, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, yeah, way, yeah, ho, yeah, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, hey, oh. Yeah, way, yeah, ho, yeah, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, oh, way, yeah, ho, way, yeah, ho, way, oh, way, yeah, hey, oh. English. All right, cool.
Thanks so much, Thunder. And thank you for opening. That was such a beautiful song. Personally, I am based in what is now known as Toronto, and that is the territory of the Anishinaabe here in Wendat, Haudenosaunee. We are under the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Treaty, and also the Mississaugas of Credit River. So we are bound by that. As a parent, it is also thinking about how I also share and explain and understand my rights and responsibilities as a settler here to the people and the land here, and sharing that with my daughter, and thinking about how creating family is also part of the settler colonial project, but also fighting back against that on an everyday basis. Something that I like to also remind people is that all land east, west, south, and north of here is Indigenous land, has been and always will be. And that's something to just ground in our conversation today, especially when we think about the ways in which we relate to each other, the ways in which we create family with each other and community with each other, and how that often does exclude Indigenous conversation and communities and people, and how we want to fight back against that. So this series is also brought to you by the Seed and Sprout community, and that specifically through Birthmark. And Gab, I think, will talk a little bit about what Birthmark is and what services they provide.
Hi, folks. My name's Gab. I'm the program coordinator for the Seed and Sprout program. Seed and Sprout program is a seedling offering from Birthmark that prioritizes queer and trans family programming. We have birth and postpartum doula care workshops and sessions like we have right now, and also support groups. I'll drop our website in the chat for folks to learn more about. Thanks, Aruna.
Great. Awesome. Thank you for that. I'm just going to take your spotlight off. Is that okay, Gab? Okay. Okay, so we're going to get right into the conversation. So we have today joining us two awesome human beings who are parents in the community, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And so today we're going to talk about a little bit about co-parenting. You also might hear my daughter because she's here and wants to hang out with us as well today. This is also when you have no childcare. So I'll let Barb and TG introduce themselves. So folks want to share their name, pronoun, and if you want to share a little bit about your family structure and how you got into becoming a co-parent. And whoever wants to start, go ahead.
I can start. I'll go for it. Hi, everyone. I'm Barb. I am a co-parent of a mostly sweet little 5-year-old named Ollie, who just started senior kindergarten. So it's been a whirlwind of co-parenting for 5 years, plus fetus time, plus a lot of planning time before then. So it's been a long journey. Ollie has 4 parents. We started off as 2 couples who came together to parent. Sort of, it's a long story, which I'll get into a little bit. Kind of accidentally got into co-parenting, and then since then the 2 couples have broken up. So Ollie is a little one who has 4 homes and continues to have 4 parents, a couple of step parents, so a big community. And there are some pretty great things about being a co-parent, and there have been a lot of challenges as well. So I'm happy to share more about my experience and answer questions along the way.
Okay, I'm TG, my pronouns are they, them. I'm a parent to 2 fire signs. One is a 6-year-old Aries and one is a 9-year-old Leo. They just also started back to school. They are in grade 1 and grade 4. We were at home all of last year during the pandemic, so it's been a challenge, and they're excited to socialize and connect and get back in school. Co-parenting during the pandemic was also challenging, as I think co-parenting always is. I didn't start out, I guess our family structure, we didn't start out with the intention of co-parenting. It was my ex-partner and I, we were creating a family, and then we also broke up. And so now we're in this co-parenting situation that I think works best for all of us.
Great, thank you. And so there are many different ways that people come together in co-parenting. And I think that the really great part about both of your situations is that, like, Barb, you had a very unique situation with 4 people, like 2 couples coming together. And I remember having those conversations early on and hearing about the agreements and the written contracts and things like that. So there's different ways that I think people create kind of safety in that and understanding in that. And I think that when we think about co-parents, and especially in the LGBTQ2S community, a lot of folks, think that you have to be in partnership with folks to be in a co-parenting situation. That is also not the case. We also, of course, know that there are co-parenting structures where it's family, it's biological family, it's non-bio family, it's chosen family, it's all these different people who come together who choose to raise a child together. So I just wanted to put that out there, that you both have very unique and different situations of how you've created your families, but co-parenting looks very different for very many different people. And I think that both of your experiences provide a really unique avenue into thinking about how to navigate those different conversations that need to happen. So going into that, can you both tell me a little bit about your co-parenting arrangement? So how did it come to be? How did it develop? So maybe if you want to give us that story that got us to this place today, on how you were both co-parenting now.
I'll go again, TG, then you start the next one. For me, it started off with my partner and I wanting a known donor, who was a friend of mine and a colleague. And they had like an awkward post-work conversation one day to be like, hey, do you want to do this thing? And then that, we had a lot of conversations with him and his partner at the time. And they were open to being known donors, but also wanted to kind of like, was a slow roll. We're like, we want known donors. And then they're like, well, if we see each other in a park, like, how would the kid refer to us? And then we'd want to be referred to as like dads. And then we had many conversations over dinner, which were like really lovely. I think before you get into parenting and before there's even a fetus, like the positive energy is strong. And so it was so lovely. We would like imagine what the world would be like. We took time to go over what we thought was a pretty thorough kind of co-parenting agreement. It was 13 pages long and it took quite a while to do. And we went to, queer and trans family planning courses and did all of that, and went to a law session like this one where a lawyer was. And we developed it. The plan was that my partner at the time and I would be primary parents, and that the other two would be like parents as well. And then in the plan, it was like our home would be their primary home. They would get to visit meaningfully. And then when there was a fetus, that was about in the 3rd trimester, we realized that we had very different ideas of what that agreement looked like. And we were one of the families who were part of the legislation that led to the All Families Are Equal Act, which is great. But I learned a lot about what it means then to have more people who are considered legal parents and how that impacts my rights. And it's been like a journey since then. So it went from being kind of known donor to parent, like being called dads, to being legal parents, to having an actual percentage of time. Ours was split 75% with my partner and I, and 25% with the 2 dads. Put it out there at the beginning, like, we're all lovely parents who all love Ollie very much, but we have a lot of interpersonal conflict that's kind of come out of that being kind of our origin story, and then how we've developed into where we are now, and a lot of lessons learned along the way. So it was supposed to be no donor. Now Ollie has 4 legal parents, and because everybody has separated, we've been going through mediation, which is like pretty time consuming when there are 4 opinions. To create a legal parenting plan, because what we had initially wasn't legally binding. It impacts what the future holds, because that was our basis. But we're in the process of getting close to finalizing an actual parenting plan that has pieces that are original. One was missing. And so I'm really looking forward to having that process completed so that we can have a really good understanding of where everybody stands. It's not kind of left in a gray area, where I think is where it started, unfortunately, because we didn't quite know what we were getting into. And we're going to have a little bit of stability for the next few years. So that's where we're at now. over to you, TG.
Thanks. So yeah, I think similarly, when we had our children, it was the intention of like, family staying together, like in a partnered way. So my partner and we had children, we decided to have children, we got married, had children, did all the like, typical lesbian thing. We chose an unknown donor through ReproMed. I think we've talked about this like in a different session. We wanted kids. So my ex-partner is white and so I'm Chinese. So we wanted to choose a donor that kind of like reflected both of us. And I think this is a talk for a different day, but there were very few options. So anyway, so our kids are mixed. So yeah, so when they were young, I guess maybe like 6 years ago, which means like Edith was 3 and Ellie was 0. Our relationship just wasn't working out, and in order for us to be the best parents we could be to our children, we had to be happy individuals. So we decided to split up. And then we've been very lucky in terms of like I feel very grateful in terms of co-parenting because we didn't have to go through mediation. We didn't have to go through like divorce lawyers, like our separation agreement. We just kind of came up with on our own. There's a lot of flexibility, and we really try to put the kids' best interests first. And so because I let my ex partner keep the family home, then I allowed that space for the kids like to have their stability and that be their home address and that be where they go to school. Yeah, but I mean I've heard like some of my friends are in similar situations and their co-parenting arrangements have been like nightmares, lots of hostility, things like that. Not to say that they're not putting their kids first, but I think when sometimes it's just difficult when we all have different opinions of what putting the kids first means. Yeah, so my arrangement, what works for us right now, because I'm, I feel like a lot of people have like the week on, week off, alternating week arrangement, but like I still play sports and I do my activities, and that's important to me as a person and as a parent. So we have a schedule where it's like 2 and 5. So I have the kids Monday, Tuesday, and then every other Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So it's like it's a common typical 2-5 schedule. Out of the 7 days, I either have them 2 days in a row or 5 days in a row. And then again, it's flexible. So it's like, on that odd Sunday, that is my weekend and I have the kids, like I'm able to ask my co-parent if they're able to take the kids, and more often than not, it's yes. Or, there's family arrangements that they want to take the kids to. That's on my days, like, there's flexibility. So we're lucky that we get along in that sense. And I guess, yeah, that's how our schedule is right now. So Barb, I'm curious. So what is like Ollie's schedule like between the 4 homes?
Yeah, it's getting worked out. It's tough because Ollie's young. So the ideal is to see, all parents without too much time in between. My ex and I are still sort of primary parents. I have the family home, but I'm not Ollie's address or home base, which was hard. So for the school year, kind of all of us pick up Ollie from school, and so there's like a 2:30 to 6:30 time. So my ex sort of does the Monday, so they stay at her house. I do Tuesday, one of the dads does Wednesday, one does Thursday. And then during school, I'd get Friday nights and every other Saturday night till the morning. I used to work on Sundays regularly, so Sunday's not my day, and it's kind of nice because I don't work Sundays now, so I have one weekend day finally. Like I single parented on my weekends for a long time. So one of the advantages of co-parenting is that you have time off that's built in. There are so many parents, my kid will never need a babysitter in their life, which is pretty ideal. And we didn't have to do childcare. We worked it out with parents and grandparents. But yeah, right now kind of sleep at my ex's 5 nights a week, and then here 1 or 2. And then when they're not here Saturday, it's with one of the dads. So they get a bit less time during the school year. And the summer, we try to prioritize longer periods of time with folks. So we each get, a weekend and then like 5 or 6 days in a row, which I think is still tough at this age, but the time, especially the summers, will become more days in a row and less back and forth, probably within a couple of years as it's age appropriate. So the kid's a little bit of a nomad, but there's we've tried to prioritize having the stability of, one home to sleep in most of the time, especially during the school year. And then, yeah, summer's a bit wonky.
Yeah, I mean, summer is a bit wonky for us too. I like to go camping and things like that, and it doesn't always work with the 2 and 5. So I just, most summers I'm taking the kids camping or to cottages Monday through Friday, and then I drop them off, and then I get the weekends off. Are you all in the same, do you all live in the same school area, all the parents, or?
Yeah, right now we do. When my ex moved out, she went 3 blocks north because Ollie school is very close to here. And then when the other 2 separated, they sold their home, which was very much downtown, and they're both renting in this neighborhood. So we can walk to everybody's home within 10 minutes, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes if you're 5. And so that's really convenient, but I always have this worry in the back of my mind, someone's gonna particularly the primary home. People have life goals, they want to buy homes, and downtown Toronto is not the place to do it. So it works super well right now, but I'm always on my toes about what might change, because there's been a lot of change over the last few years, but it's been quiet for the last little bit. So it is convenient to live nearby. I don't miss that half an hour drive or 50-minute TTC ride to get to the dad's house that we used to have to do.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that was intentional to be all close together, because I'm about a 20-minute drive from my co-parents' house. But luckily enough, I teach at a school that's 5 minutes away from my kids' school, so I don't have to be in Toronto traffic for an hour every morning just to get my kids to school on time. So that works out for me as well.
Yeah, it works out well. I mean, yours is a 50-50 schedule, but it looks a little bit different. Ours isn't. I don't have half the time that I would have had if we'd stayed together. But because of how the transitions work and because of Ollie's age, it is super helpful. I think when they're older and you can do chunks of time, then having a bit of a commute is okay. But when the dad sold their place, I didn't want to provide any input. You have to come here, stay in Toronto. But it is helpful right now at this age to be close together.
A question for both of you. You've touched a little bit about this in different ways, but what are some hurdles that had to happen in order for you to get to a place where you're Barb, you said you're working things out and in mediation right now. What are some hurdles that maybe you didn't anticipate? So some things that, kind of lessons learned, things that you're wow, I wish I would have known this before. But then also some things that have been really useful in this co-parenting agreement and arrangement. So first thing around hurdles, things that you didn't know about, and then following up with things that have been really useful.
I think it was my turn to go first. So,
yeah.
So I didn't even think about it when we were thinking about making children and having a family. We were just, we're getting married, we're gonna have kids, and we didn't talk about how we would parent. We just thought, we're a couple, we'll figure it out. And in retrospect, I think it would have been helpful. I think if I were to have any more kids, not to say I am, but just to have those conversations. I guess some hurdles is differences in parenting, especially cultural. So I'm Chinese. It's and so it's been a challenge where, like, you know, growing up, it's been like, you don't feel like, for me as a child, like, you know, you don't feel your feelings, you just do what you're expected. There's no vulnerability. It just has to be a certain way. And then, so I've been trying to actively unlearn those things, and also for my kids, and also being like a person of color, there's like different ways that we navigate the world, whereas like my ex-partner is white. So having those conversations about, like, you know, I'm always the one, I feel like I'm always the one having those conversations with my kids about their role as white passing people in the world. And, you know, my co-parent does what she can. Like, I think she's still, you know, pretty cool, but I feel like there's always more that could be done. One thing is, like, my daughter will call "Oh Canada" the song of the colonizers and doesn't want to stand for it. And so then we were having this discussion. So, like, you know, Edith doesn't want to stand for "Oh Canada." Like, how are we going to navigate this? Because I think to some Canadians, that's seen as being disrespectful, which is absolutely fine for my kid to be disrespectful to, you know, Song of the Colonizers. But so then we had to come up with a plan on what felt good for us. So, you know, so then we decided that, you know, if my daughter wanted to not stand for the anthem, then she would take a knee instead of just sitting in her seat and make it seem like she's like just lazy and not standing up. And there's like a little bit more intention behind that. So yeah, so I think, I don't know, I think I just went off on a tangent. So hurdles, and not, I guess, not having those conversations before, and then kind of like, oh shoot, now our relationship didn't work out and now we have to co-parent. And yeah, I mean, there's times where it's just a struggle, as like with any interpersonal relationships. But I think sometimes with time it helps. And yeah, and one of the good things about co-parenting is that I get time to myself. And I feel like when I was in that situation where I didn't feel like I had a lot of time for myself, I wasn't the best parent I could be, because I was not, I wasn't like too happy, I was burnt out, and I didn't have time for me to do what I need to. So it's really nice because I can send the kids away and then I have time for myself, and I'm like excited to see them, and instead of like, oh, you know, when is it weekend? When is it, you know, when are you going to go see your grandparents? Things like that. So I feel like parenting is more intentional in that sense too. Okay, I think I'm done ranting. Sorry.
It was great.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I think that is similar in some ways to my situation. So I think start with a couple of things that I would have liked to have known. So I think that I didn't have a good understanding of like the power of being a legal parent, when you might write up this like really great piece of paper that says like, you're all equal. But when the kid is here and there's a bunch of legal parents who have different opinions than you do, they hold a lot of more power than I would have agreed to had I known this initially. A friend of mine was in a couple and they found a donor who wasn't a legal parent, but the way that they framed that donor's relationship, because they wanted their kid to know them, was like, you have all of the rights of an uncle. You're a family member. We're going to make sure, you know, that they know you. If you have a birthday, you know, maybe they'll go to your birthday, but you know, an uncle doesn't have any say over where that kid goes to school, how much time they have with them. So I think that's how I more envisioned the family that I was hoping to build, was to have like these loving family members who you could say like, I really want the weekend off, like go to your dad's and have a good time. But having it become like a legal standing, and that didn't mean that I get to make those decisions anymore. Like I was one of my ex and I were major decision makers initially, and through mediation, because I am not as aligned parenting wise as the other three, I've had a lot taken away, including everybody becoming a major decision maker. So I have like less ability to have a say in some of those really important things of what happens. And I can only speak to my experience from that. I think teach it's similar to yours. Like I'm an immigrant, from an immigrant family. I'm super white passing, but I'm also Arab. I have like strong cultural perspectives. And the three folks that I chose to parent with are like white, cisgendered, queer folks who are all like white settlers, have been here for a while, who I think fortunately for me do tend to have like more activisty conversations, some of which are safer. But I find that the public facing politics of some of like the white queers out there are very different from what you'll find within your home and when you get into family with people. So I don't think I saw that initially. And that's been really tough to be like, oh, these are some like radical politics and this kind of stuff. And, someone's Instagram might say one thing, and then the way that you interact with them interpersonally is pretty different. So yeah, just really exploring all the different ways that folks move through the world. And I have to like go to a lot of therapy and be able to like be settled into where I'm at and what my family is like, and just have like the greatest relationship with my kid and be an awesome parent. Like I love being parent. When I had my kid here almost full time for a year or two, like I love that. I had no life. I didn't do any sports. Now I have some more of that time, but there's like, it's not quite the in-between that I was looking forward to. Some of the other advice, I think if you're getting into a co-parent relationship with somebody who you're not in a partnership with, like a romantic or a romantic partnership with, it might actually be worth spending $1,000, if you have it, on a lawyer, and each of you like coming up with a document. That's way cheaper than sorting it out after. Like having something that, and everyone says like, oh, lawyers are so scary, they're going to do this and that. I'm like, totally. I also would have gotten a lot of really good perspective that would have helped prepare me for the future. That's something I would have changed. I think creating like beautiful documents that you write yourself, on co-create on Google Docs is great, but it's not quite what's going to work. Oh, hold on. Tiny human needs water. Yeah, I think those are my things. I think I would have sought some more official advice and been really thoughtful. Other hurdles, I think for me, and I don't know, TG, if this rings true for you, being a non-bio parent and having an ex who saw themselves as more of a parent than me because of biology, and like said it outright to me more than once, really impacted my relationship with the kid, but also how much I like kind of my rights and the time that I would have when we separated. So that was a tough one for sure in terms of like parenting agreements. We have really interesting conversations with the kid now that they're like, this morning chatting about DNA, like, well, you didn't give me anything. Like I gave you love and time and food. And I think that's just this age. And I'm happy to have those conversations with the kid, but like when an adult who you're in a co-parenting relationship carries some of these perspectives, that has like a very different impact on me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I remember when we first separated and the kids would cry for their mommy, and I felt so like, I don't know, just unable to parent. Like I wasn't a parent because I wasn't able to give my kids that comfort that they sought from their like biological parent. But I think it's an age thing because, as they get older, then they start to see both for all the people as parents a little bit more. And I feel like my older one is so similar to me that like you wouldn't be able to tell, you know, that we're not biologically related, I guess, in the way that she acts and how she carries herself and things like that.
Thanks for that. I think those are really stark reminders around the different ways that parenting comes up and is impacted depending on like where you are in your co-parenting arrangement, and also who you are to your kid, who you are to your co-parents. I think that changes the game completely. I'm a single solo parent by choice, so very different situation, very different like hurdles, very different things. And I think we're actually going to try to do a solo parents by choice panel, because I think it is also another a piece that a lot of people don't talk about in terms of how single parenthood also comes up through co-parenting. And then you find yourself being a single parent, right? When that wasn't the case. And so co-parenting, I think folks don't really think about co-parenting also being a single parent situation. And that's also, I think, kind of separated, because yes, you are co-parenting, but, you know, Barb, you mentioned this for a second, that, you know, you were single parenting it for a while until you had your Sundays back, right? So maybe if you want to talk about like what comes up in terms of that shift, and what co-parenting means in terms of also having time with other parents, but also time by yourself, and what that looks like for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, for me, anytime that my kid is here, I'm single parenting. I think you could have a whole other session on like queer step parenting, because I have a partner, but like this is, you know, it's like a decision that I made to have a kid, and it's my responsibility. And so it is a lot. I think that, you know, hats off to you for solo parenting. I single parent part-time, and it can be really tiring. But it isn't something that I thought I'd get into, because it was with a partner, but there is also, after a separation, a lot of freedom to that. Like you get your own space, and you get to parent in a way that you want when you're in that space. Knowing that someone else is parenting a whole other way, and you're gonna have to like work with the dynamics of that. But it was definitely freeing to have that opportunity to like all those kind of barriers. I could create healthy boundaries to those where I couldn't when we were in the same house or spending a lot more time together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I don't know, maybe this is my own stuff as like being the non-bio parent, but when the kids were younger, I like kind of took the lead on my co-parent because they were the bio parent. But then after we separated, and I always identify as like a part-time single parent too, because when it's just me and the kids, it's really exhausting. But yeah, and again, the freedom to parent them the way I want, and teach them the things that I want, and teach them how to like, I guess, like experience and navigate life, and just see it in a different way has been really freeing.
And try not to get caught up in the like, well, at this house, I get to do this. Well, at this house. So there's also like, it is helpful to, and I teach you have like a probably better relationship with your co-parent, but like having that good relationship to be like, okay, well, we need to be on the same page about some of these things. You can't watch 8 hours of TV here and like have an hour here, especially at a young age. I think they kind of grow out of that, but it's like, well, this is going to be your favorite house and you're going to hate everywhere else because you eat Fruit Loops and watch TV all day, you know?
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
You know, a thing that happens with young kids. So it's part of like, it's totally freeing, and also to like really work the dynamics to ensure that there's some kind of stability across.
Yeah, and consistency. Like I get that with my co-parent too, where I feel like the younger one prefers her more, which is fine, because of some of the things that they do at their house that's different than mine. Mostly screen time.
Yeah, screen time seems to be the big one for kids, right? And navigating. So I guess we're gonna kind of ease into a Q&A so folks can ask questions. And if people do have questions, please consider writing them in the chat if you'd like, or you can even come on screen and ask if you'd like. I think for the Q&A, we'll probably end recording so that way folks feel a little bit more open. Or if you don't feel like you want to be like on screen, I can just read the question without your name if that feels safer for you. So whatever you prefer. And so, yeah, just I guess to end off, kind of just some last thoughts around what are some like base advice if folks are either currently single or in a co-parenting potential either agreement or in a partnership and planning to co-parent. I know there's a lot of couples who are, you know, obviously going into a co-parenting situation based on their relationship, but there's also single people who are co-parenting. There are people who were together and now co-parenting. So what are some base advice that you give them right now going into it, whether or not the child is already here? What would you want to say to those folks?
I think I would just say what Barb said about spending that like grand and getting a lawyer and just, you know, laying things out to prevent these situations from happening later down the road. Like I'm very fortunate that I didn't have to go down that road, but so many of my friends have had to go down that road and are still going down that road, and it's really hard. And it's really hard to do while you're parenting because parenting is exhausting. So yeah, just what Barb said about that. I don't know if you have any other thing you want to add, Barb.
Yeah, I mean, I'd add it's about, you know, $7,000 if you're the one initiating that process later on, just to start it. That is significantly more expensive than working together in like a good place to make sure all the bases are covered. You don't have to go the legal route, obviously, but having some independent advice can be helpful, and it's not super expensive to do like an hour at all if possible, or, you know, there are more accessible family lawyers that are available to just talk you through the steps. Overall, I think, you know, my situation's pretty unique, but so many people's is to really consider not giving up too much at the beginning. So yeah, I was like, I didn't want to be a parent for the longest time. And then I made, you know, one of my good friends was a parent and a couple with a little kid. We're family. And I was like, this is all right. Like, this is way better than what my childhood seemed like. Maybe I do want to do this. So I like eased into the idea. So co-parenting for me sounded great because I could do it part-time. And then when I had a kid, I'm like, so great. I love being a parent. I'm really good at being a child. And I really enjoyed that. And when I was like, you know, oh, I guess 75% of the time, like, yeah, I can handle that. And then it changed, right? It's changed the whole time. So finding like, I would say asking for more or like what you need at the beginning and being really solid about that. So that, you know, especially if you have like family in the city, if you have close friends, if you have other folks who can help with childcare, keeping your kid entertained for like an afternoon on a Saturday. But I can understand 100% the interest in co-parenting if you're a single human who wants to have a kid. Like, it can be really beautiful. Like, my kid is into things that I have no idea about. Like, I don't know, I've never known this much about superheroes, but I'm like seeing their lives like expand and grow and learn because there's so many cool perspectives being added into their life that I wouldn't be able to provide on my own. So there's some like really great pieces as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that it's a really important piece around remembering that, like, you know, what parenting does and what kids do is it really brings up a lot of stuff around that you wouldn't expect, right? So I think people forget that, you know, when you're going into a parenting agreement or a situation where you're like building a family, it is so exciting. It is like lots of nervousness, lots of like different feelings, but there's a lot of excitement, especially when people are trying to co-parent together. What people often forget is that also when the kid is here, things also very much change, right? It also really triggers people a lot. And I've talked about this in all the other sessions as well. It's to really consider the emotional and psychological impact that parenting and co-parenting has. When you're having to, you know, this is not just some like random person, this is like your kid. This is I mean, if anything happened to my kid, I don't even know what I would do, you know, and it creates a whole other realm of unknowns that you can never be prepared for, right? And so I think that going into it, really thinking about how this is going to impact you and your co-parent and your family is so important to consider. And also really having those conversations, so when there is a breakdown, never assuming that there's not going to be a breakdown is, I think, is the important part about it. Because often I think people are like, oh my gosh, nothing's ever going to happen to us. We're so solid. We got this like on lock. And then, life is very much unknown. As Octavia Butler says, God is change. And so we have to really remember that change is like a constant, including in parental and parenting situations. So I really think that it's really important to think about all the possibility, including breakdowns that happen, and also good possibilities that, things might just be great. And what does it mean for us to include another parent, or, because everything's going so well, there's also that possibility of it too. It's not just negative or hard. So, but I think having ourselves prepared means also being realistic about not being in this that honeymoon phase of all the excitement and hormones of yes, we're having a baby, but also let's be realistic about what could possibly happen here.